Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nerve Guys podcast, where we discuss movement through the lens of the brain. My name is James, and this is the Neuroband. We'll talk more about that at the end of the video, but if you would like to support us, I'd really appreciate if you check it out. Today, we're going to be talking about strength. So this was not something that was specifically asked by a viewer, but was off the back of a conversation we had about like strongman competitions and what constitutes strength, or like what constitutes the strongest at a specific task, because it's really hard to define. The strongest person, maybe it's the person who can lift up the heaviest thing, but which way? If you can push something heavier or pull it, does that make a difference? Is it getting it over your head? Is it just getting it off the ground? Is that even a good metric? Is it actually better to say, well, who could lift up something a little bit heavy the most times? Or could it be any other metric that you can use for your muscles? So like, is it the fastest, or who can do one rep the slowest? Is really hard to say. And I guess when it comes to like World's Strongest Man competitions, they've gone for a mix of like, you want to be slightly all-round at all those things, but I guess they've also chosen what's aesthetically going to be the most fun to watch. So, they've got lots of events, but everything's super visual, and, it's interesting for spectators to watch, because if it wasn't, then I guess they just wouldn't do it. So I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to give you an example of what my World's Strongest Man contest might look like, and hopefully we're not going to be here too long. Strength, in my opinion, when we talk about the capacity of the muscles, that's got to be something to do with strength. So it's something about your muscles being able to do the most of something, and like heavy weights and stuff seems to be a really good place to start. But since learning about the brain and nervous system, I've kind of adopted a very different view of what I think strength is, what I think competency is, and most of this kind of comes from Dr. Eric Cobb of Z Health. If you've been following my stuff, you'll know that most of my work borrows pretty heavily from the world of Z Health. They've just done a really good job of explaining the brain and nervous system to the world of, personal trainers, athletic coaches, massage therapists. They really are like the number one source. If you want to go and learn directly from the source, those are the guys to do it with. And one of the concepts that Dr. Cobb will always mention when he's talking about strength is that actually when you're exerting a force for whatever reason, you never want to be exerting the maximum force. You always should be going for the minimum amount of effort to achieve the goal. And it kind of makes sense in terms of how your brain's wired. Your brain is all about energy efficiency, and anytime that you're wasting energy unnecessarily, that is what's going to bring your performance down. So when it comes down to it, the top tennis player might not actually be that much stronger in terms of the muscle fibers or the muscle mass of their individual muscles versus like an amateur tennis player or somebody who's kind of quite good. But where the big differences are going to be is that tennis player has worked out how to combine his entire body in a way that utilizes everything at the minimum amount of energy possible. So the person who can get the job done without wasting all of their energy on any one task. So in a tennis serve, let's say, lifting your arm up overhead isn't just going to cause motion in the arm. The other side of the body is going to have to adjust to balance you. Your eyes are going to have to change. That's going to change the visual picture. That's going to affect your vestibular system. Your breathing's going to change. Your sense of the world around you's got to change. The brain has to basically figure out how to most efficiently do all those things at the same time. And it might not actually mean that they're much stronger than somebody else. I've had pretty good real-world experience of this in that when I used to be a gymnastics coach and an acrobatics coach for the circus, we would have all the time like bodybuilders and strongmen come in to do workshops. And especially when it came to something like handstands or partner balancing, so like, you know, human pyramids and that kind of thing, it was always really surprising how much these people struggled. So when you look at them, you're just like, all right, you're built like a tank. You should be able to balance a person on your feet, no problem. But almost always, like, they would be super unstable. They would struggle quite a lot, and you know, they were still stronger than a lot of the other people in the class, so they would pick it up quicker. But as soon as the task didn't resemble exactly what they were trying to do, the muscle mass and the muscle density just didn't do that good a job at, you know, getting everything done, even though they've probably done loads of work on instability and stuff like that. As soon as it was taken out of context, the muscles just kind of failed them, and still took them a while to get going. Like I said, they did get there faster than the people who were less well built or less fit, but the learning curve was still there, and it still kind of happened along the same kind of route. So I always figured that was pretty interesting. And over my time, especially since I've started looking at grip strength in particular and relating that to the work I do with ADHD and focus, I've started to imagine strength less as everything tending towards the upper limits, so like the maximum force, less around the kind of Z-health ideas of like, just as long as you can use the minimum force for the right kind of thing. I would say strength to me is actually the person who can exhibit the widest range of forces on any one particular spectrum is the strongest in that area. So if we go for something like grip strength, most of the time we're using a dynamometer and you're pulling as hard as you can and you get the biggest number on it, you would say that person is the strongest. But what I found with those people is very often, like when people just train grip strength for the sake of grip strength, they finish it and their muscles are still super tense and they've done nothing to like ease that off. To me, that's not strength, because the muscles aren't actually in a good enough state to essentially go again if they needed to. I would argue that the best grip strength is going to be the person who can exert the maximum force, the minimum force. So, you know, if we could get a device that could read it readily enough, who could actually pull 0.0001 kilos. That's probably a ridiculous number, but you know, when you try to exert the least amount of force you can, there's a certain level of inertia you have to overcome. And for most people, especially when I see people who aren't very athletically proficient, you know, when they go to squeeze or when they go to contract, they've got 0 and then to like 25%, and there's nothing in between that gap. And then they can go 25 to 50 maybe, and there's nothing in between that gap. And then they've got their maximum, and again, nothing in between. And I actually think it's much better to measure strength as the person who could hit every single percentage point, or, you know, every single decimal all the way up and back down, than to say the person who can do the most or the least or the middle is the one who is the strongest, because they're the person who is going to be most adaptable to any different circumstance. So we don't usually see that in most sports. Most of the time, when you get the strength and conditioning coach, they're always trying to improve the maximum. But when you start to see the sports that are less physically demanding, you sometimes see that in action. So snooker and pool are pretty good examples. You know, you see somebody break in pool and you see them absolutely slam the cue ball into the other balls, and you can just feel how much force that they're putting through that. And if you ever try to replicate it yourself, it's pretty damn impossible. But then when you look at the other shots that they're making, a lot of the time they're trying to put like really tiny amounts of force. And again, if you go and try and replicate that, it's pretty hard as well. And the best pool players really are the ones who have complete control over that spectrum. I think I would say if I was going to design my own world's strongest man, that would be the one criteria. It'd be take, you know, any of the events. Can you pull a plane? Could be fun to do, but can you pull a wheelbarrow but at a continuous set speed so that you have like a minimum amount of force that you have to exert on it? Could be pretty fun. Can you lift up the heaviest thing, but then also can you lift up the most fragile thing without smashing it to pieces? Challenging the two extremes, but challenging everything else in between is my idea of what good strength is, and that when people work with me is what I try to produce in them as well. It's never about just being able to do the maximum. It's always about making you as fully competent as you can possibly be, because I think it's more important for a healthy and sustainable life, as well as being more useful in any kind of athletic endeavor that you would embark on. So that's my thoughts for today. Let me know. I'd be curious to hear if anyone actually agrees with that, or whether this all is just pointless speculating. But yeah, either way, let me know what you think. If you're interested in exploring some of this more, so if you like what you hear on these podcasts, I would really appreciate it if you would check out the Neuroband. Head to rewirend.com. You'll find a link in the description below. And this is our vision and balance training tool. Basically, if you want to get a introduction into what the brain and the nervous system can do for you, the very best place that you can look is the visual systems and the vestibular or balance systems. Those are the two that pretty much underpin every single thing that we do. So, you know, we do a lot of work on training the body, but actually our body is only as good as our eyes can see what we need to do, and our inner ear can actually balance us while we do it. So once we train these two systems, we find life just gets easier. And also, since we're talking about strength today, our other course that we have just sitting there online is all about grip strength, and it's specifically based around this idea of developing competency at all levels. It does require a dynamometer, and we do a lot of work on pulling the maximum just because that's what people are interested in, but it's specifically there because I want people to become competent at using their hands, and grip strength is a really good way to do it. But we don't just want to be able to grip, we want to be able to be dexterous, we want to be able to use our hands for whatever they need to be doing. So those are our products. Please check them out. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.